Siege means that food, water and fuel, all basic commodities, are being used to collectively punish more than 2 million people, among them a majority of children and women. There have been intense negotiation and endless shuttle diplomacy to open a humanitarian supply line. So far, it has only resulted in a handful of aid convoys. This will not reverse the fact that Gaza is being strangled. The people of Gaza feel shunned, alienated, and abandoned. Over the last week, I followed very closely the focus about the number of trucks entering in Gaza. Many of us saw in these trucks a glimmer of hope. This is, however, becoming a distraction. These few trucks are nothing more than a crumbs that will not make a difference. The message that few trucks a day means the siege is lifted for humanitarian aid. This is not true. The current system in place is geared to fail. What is needed is meaningful and uninterrupted aid flow. And to succeed, we need a humanitarian ceasefire to ensure this aid reaches those in need. This should not be too much to ask. Civilians are already paid a staggering price. More than 1 million people displaced, entire neighborhood flattened, thousands killed, thousands more injured, with almost no access to hospitals anymore. And all this under our daily and constant watch. Every day is also becoming a sad day for the United Nations and UNRWA, as the number of our colleagues killed is increasing. Today, at least 57 colleagues of mine are confirmed killed. In one day, we had confirmation that 15 were killed. And these are mothers, fathers, wonderful people who have just dedicated their life to their communities. And if they were not in Gaza, they could have been your neighbor. One of our colleagues 2 days ago died while he was going to the bakery to pick bread. He left 6 children behind, 6 displaced children in shelter. And meanwhile, we have thousands of UNRWA colleagues who, despite the fact they share the same loss, fear and daily struggle of millions of Gazans, put on the UN vest and go to work. They are, for me, the true heroes. Our teams are also the ones going to the border late at night with these few trucks. And after having waited for a day to get approval and clearances until it is completed. And they carry boxes, offload, download trucks in the dark while bombardment and aerial strikes are taking place. My colleagues are the face of humanity during what I would describe one of the darkest hours. But you know, they also absorb the anxiety and the anger of all those displaced in UNRWA shelter. They are a community which seems to have turned its back to the Gaza. And it pains me that humanitarian aid, a very basic right for people, is constantly questioned, while at the same time despair is live-streamed under our watch. My colleagues in Gaza report that the last remaining public services are collapsing. Our aid operation is crumbling, and for the first time ever, They report that now people are hungry. Civil order is collapsing, and anger starts to be channeled towards my colleagues. How long can we last? I don't know, but certainly no more than 2 days. Let me also say that many argue that aid cannot enter because of aid diversion. Let me be clear. We have solid monitoring mechanisms. UNRWA is a direct provider of assistance to people in need. All our vendors and partners are vetted against the sanction list. We give aid to those who need it most. Our convoys are notified and deconflicted. UNRWA does not and will not divert any humanitarian aid into the wrong hands. Finally, you have heard our calls and repeated calls for the rule of wars to be applied to this war too. It means to apply the international humanitarian law, means the application of the principle of proportionality and distinction. Civilians have to be spared. Hospitals, schools, UN premises hosting hundreds of thousands of displaced people seeking safety have to be respected. To do so, we need also, and here I think for me it's an important point, we need also to see the human face of Gazan civilians. To equal Gaza with Hamas is a very dangerous and misleading. It is an equation aimed at dehumanizing people, aimed at making the unjustifiable justifiable. Keeping our humanity means showing that the people in Gaza deserve our empathy and our compassion. No one can claim I did not know, as images, footages, and voices of unspeakable suffering continue to come out by the hour from Gaza. We cannot anymore turn a blind eye to this human tragedy. Millions of people are asking, especially in this region, especially in Gaza, why does the world not have the will to act and put an end to this hell on earth? They deserve an answer. Delaying it will deepen the polarization in this region and increase the risk of spillover. Finally, as Commissioner General, I intend to visit Gaza to express solidarity and amplify the voices of the communities and of our staff. Gaza is the place where I almost started my career 30 years ago, and this is where I feel I need to be. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take 3 questions only. Introduce yourself, please.
Ines Tara from ABC News. On this issue of fuel, can you tell us how much fuel you still have in reserve? Can you also confirm the IDF's claims that Hamas has close to 500,000 liters of fuel? Are you in touch with Hamas to get their fuel? And then separately, what's your reaction to President? Really quickly, what's your reaction? Okay, so the fuel issue. How many liters of fuel do you have in reserve, and this Hamas issue?
As far as UNRWA is concerned, we have fuel for today. Now, there is a place where there is fuel, which was a fuel based on the agreement between Israel and Qatar, fuel being brought in by Egypt. I guess you are referring to this fuel. If we have access to this fuel, we will have access only through deconfliction with Israel. There might be some fuel available that would bring us for 1 or 2 more days. The quantity of fuel we need for the operation I indicated before is 160,000 liters a day to supply our partners, the hospitals, the bakeries, and for our own operation.
John Reed from the Financial Times. Thank you for the briefing. A quick question about the casualty numbers in Gaza, because it's become such an international talking point. From the UN's point of view, in past conflicts, and I think this is the fifth one in less than 2 decades, have the death numbers that the Palestinian health officials in the Gaza Strip came up with proved reliable after the conflict when the UN looked at them?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question. Indeed, in the past, the 5-6 cycle of a conflict in the Gaza Strip, these figures were considered as credible, and no one ever really challenged these figures. Maybe the second point here, we made a correlation between the number of staff killed compared to the number of staff that we have, and the number of staff announced killed within the population and the total population, and we have more or less the same percentage.
Just going back.
Tom Bateman from the BBC. First of all, completely understanding the challenges that the UN and UNRWA has working with de facto authorities in places where the authorities are not internationally recognised. Having said that, the Israelis have made a very specific claim, which is that there's at least 500,000 to 1 million litres of fuel that is held by Hamas. And more than that, they said that fuel has been stolen from UNRWA. And I'd just really like to push you to address that, because at the moment that accusation is standing, because I've not heard the UN respond to it, and it would just be good to get a specific response on that.
So your first question is similar to the first question.
Yeah.
I don't know what Hamas has or does not have in the Gaza Strip. I hear claims 6 weeks of supply and so on. I have absolutely no idea. What I know is that in the depot where Qatar and Israel agreed to bring fuel in the Gaza Strip from Egypt, there is some fuel. Is it 200, 300, 400,000 liters still remaining? I do not know. If we have access to this fuel, we are deconflicting with the Israelis, because you cannot send a convoy to this depot without the agreement and the deconfliction.
But it's the Israelis that are blocking access, you're saying, because it's not deconflicted. You're saying that's not deconflicted,
over the
you can't get there.
last few days, there have been some fuel coming in which have been deconflicted, basically.
Okay. And what? Sorry, just on the point about fuel being stolen.
So it's all fuel inside Gaza.
And what about fuel being stolen? This accusation.
I'm not aware of fuel being stolen.
Thank you.
I'm aware of fuel we have taken in order to keep our operation. But even the fuel, which is the fuel you are referring, most likely, this one is being depleted.
Being stolen
No, they're saying fuel was. They're saying fuel. I think they mean in the past. I don't think they're saying necessarily now. But
no,
not in the past. This is not true. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
sure.
Beyton'un bölgesiyle Endonezya Hastanesi'nden bir açıklama yapılmıştı. Endonezya Hastanesi'nden hemen o bombardımanların yaşandığı noktaların yanı başında ve Endonezya Hastanesi'nin artık yakıtlarının kalmadığını ve herhangi bir 124 sivil var. İşte artık operasyonun başka bir aşamasına geçildiği aşikar şu an itibariyle de o bombardıman.
Hamas could actually supply hospitals. Thank you.
Yeah. So fuel has been coming in through Egypt since just after May 2021. So when this particular load was delivered, I don't know. But there was about 1 million liters on October 6th. And so UNRWA has gradually been able to access that, as I say, with coordination. The only fuel that I'm aware of that Hamas would have had access to before October 6th is at this fuel pump that I'm talking about. I'm not aware of any other Hamas reserves. And I know I've seen some documentation from the Israelis about using other sources, etc. But for example, I think they indicated that the remaining reserves could be used for, can't remember if it was desalination or hospitals for the next month, but that would mean nothing else would have fuel. So as always, the devils are a bit in the detail. Thanks.
Indeed. We have Jamil Shade, our Brazilian journalist from UNRWA.
I have two questions. First of all, from this situation that you mentioned, and especially on UNRWA, what kind of services have been already finished or are not operating in the same level as of the last 4 or 5 days, let's say? What kind of services you had to scale down, if you could give us details on that? And secondly, on the visas by Israel, how much has that affected your operation? How many people have requested visas and have been denied? Thank you.
Okay, so in terms of scaling down, well, UNRWA used to provide healthcare, education, jobs, all of that has pretty well stopped since October 7th. And whether or not this is a service from UNRWA or just a basic service to the population, of course, the access to clean drinking water, the access to healthcare, that has all significantly dropped, including the healthcare from UNRWA. Now, let's take, for example, the shelters. As I've said, they're at 2.5% of capacity. Most people who are there are being provided 1 liter of water from UNRWA, so that's a service delivery which isn't anywhere near what it needs to be. The sanitation systems across, not just the shelters, but across Gaza are all being blocked up. All the raw sewage is being pumped into the sea, but once that fuel runs out, whether or not it's tomorrow or on Monday, depending on the access to the fuel, that means the fuel is not going to be able to be put into the sea, which in and of itself is highly problematic, as we all know, but it will start overflowing onto the streets. The bakeries are also very short on fuel. UNRWA has been providing them with flour that's been coming in, but they're obviously having to ration the fuel, and their estimates of what they need to provide the population with, I think there was some estimate that they were going to be able to last for 20 days, and now it's down to 11. So this is an ongoing...
Lynn, we've lost you. We've lost your last words. I don't know what's happening. It's just 1 second, please. Can you please try, if you may repeat the last sentence, because we didn't hear it. No, we can't hear you. We've lost your voice. Just 1 second. I'm looking at my colleagues in the régie. Sorry for that, Lynn. Can you please make me a sign when it's... Sorry, Lynn, I see they are doing something.
Oh yeah, they lost me.
Oh, no.
Online.
Now we can hear you.
In the room. All right.
You're back.
Great.
You're back. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I don't know if you now remember your last sentence, but...
I think I was talking about bakeries.
Yes, exactly. You were saying that the fuel, the bakeries had been given flour, but from UNRWA, but said that they didn't have the fuel.
Yeah, so they estimated that they would be able to bake bread for about 20 days for over 1 million people, but now that's down to 11 days because of the lack of fuel, but also obviously the demand. On the visa issue, we haven't had any issues denied yet. And this is a threat that has been made before by the government of Israel. And we have been informed that at the working level, that order not to issue visas has not been given yet. So it will just be a matter of the next few days to see if anything will be denied.
And maybe I can add on that what the spokesperson of the Secretary General said yesterday about this issue. We said that the UN are continuing to engage through the normal channels with Israeli officials in order to get the visas that are needed for the UN staff. I'll go to the next question. Lynn, sorry, maybe this is a question more for the people who are with you. I don't know if Mini or somebody else can send also your notes, because there were a lot of numbers, a lot of figures, and the journalists are asking if it's possible to have them in writing as soon as possible. Thank you very much. So let's go to Antonio Broto, who is our correspondent of the Spanish news agency, EFE. Decidedly, we have a problem today. We have lost Antonio, so while we get him back, let's go to Catherine Fiancon, France 24.
Yes, good morning, Alessandra. Good morning, Lynn. Alessandra, online, we did not lose Lynn. We heard her perfectly.
Thanks to let us know. So it was a problem in the press room. Go ahead, ask your question to Lynn.
Yes, so thank you for sending the notes as soon as possible, as requested by Alessandra. Thank you, Lynn, for all the details. Regarding the fuel quantities, do you have figures to provide us about what is normally needed per day or per month? Because you just mentioned 1 million liters. But to what extent it corresponds, how many days or month? And the other question I had was related to the decision of French President Macron to send the French hospital ship that is supposed to arrive, I don't know, maybe is it during the weekend? Will it help? Will you be able to work with that hospital ship? And restrictions, visa restrictions, you say that until now you haven't been impacted, but what we heard is that Israel is in fact providing an unrestricted number of visas to humanitarian people before October 7. There was problems for humanitarian people to get visas to go anyway. And my last element was what you mentioned, that you haven't been able to coordinate with Israel. What does it mean about certain elements? Does it mean that you have problem of communication or with Israel, or is there, I don't know, the speed is a very low speed in answering your requests? Could you be a bit more precise about the kind of relations that you have with the authorities? Thank you so much, Lynn.
Thank you. Lynn.
Yep. Okay. So the fuel and electricity is a little bit tricky because electricity comes from a bunch of sources. So before October 7th, there were 46 trucks of fuel that crossed daily. But of course, there's also the issue of the electricity lines, which provided electricity, obviously. And so before the escalation, we had, I'm trying to see, I've only got a bar graph here without a number, but let's say it was about 30% of the electricity or the energy sources that were coming from Israeli lines. And then we have a Gaza power plant. So as I say, it's a little bit difficult, but I think the 46 trucks of fuel is a good indicator. And of course, the Gaza power plant, which probably provides around 15% of the fuel, is no longer operating. So I think that gives you some idea. 782 trucks would have crossed from October 7th to date, and none of those have come across with fuel. In terms of the ship, the United Nations would, I assume, I haven't actually had a discussion on this, but obviously would welcome this. The issue will be, of course, getting patients out to it and back again, and what type of processes that involves, which takes me to the coordination with the government of Israel. We are in touch with them at least every single hour of every day. Often till late at night in terms of coordination. So when I said we weren't able to coordinate, it was specifically with respect to accessing the fuel that was at the pump at Rafah on a regular basis. Some days we were able to, and other days we were not. Now, in terms of the coordination of the number of goods going in, I have called for that process to allow for increased volume at a faster rate. Currently, somewhere between 10 and 20 trucks to date, or each day, sorry, is clearly not sufficient when there were 450 trucks going in daily before October 7th. What we need is a faster mechanism. It's not an issue of them not getting back to us. It's an issue of very, very, very detailed negotiations to try and make sure that Israel's security concerns, which are quite legitimate, especially with respect to fuel, which is what we call a high-risk dual-use item. And so there's very detailed discussions going on about how we can increase the volume and the pace of assistance that's going in. Yes, and it's correct on the visa issue that even before October 7th, there were certain agencies who were going through different processes. I'm sure most of you know that OHCHR, High Commissioner for Human Rights offices, were not able to get visas to get into Palestine for, I think it's 2.5 years now. The head of the OHCHR office, who works out of Amman with the rest of the team, with the rest of the international staff who needs visas, was given a visa for the first time in 2.5 years, about a month ago. So he has been able to come back and forth between Amman and Palestine.
Thank you, Lynn. And one of the journalists, Paul, is asking confirmation. You said 780 trucks would.
So I don't have the numbers at the top of my head. So, yes.
Maybe Isbini can also get this into the notes.
782 would have gone
Would have passed. Okay. Thank you very much.
And
so
let
me go. Thank you very much. So let me go back to Antonio, that we have recuperated now from the Spanish news agency. We should be able to hear him.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So with all the bombings now in the south of Gaza and the launching of the operations for Israel in the center of the Strip, do you think there is now a place in Gaza that is safer than the others? And also, do you think that the evacuation orders of Israel have any meaning now? Thank you.
I think the UN's been saying for quite some time that there's really nowhere safe right now. We have reported that some of the Palestinians who moved south have moved back to the north because of the airstrikes in the south, but also because of the living conditions in the south are untenable for them. And I think you need to ask Palestinians who are in Gaza whether or not those evacuation warnings are of any meaning to them or not.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Bianca Routier, who is our correspondent of Globo TV from Brazil.
Hi, thanks, Alessandra. Yeah, of course, you are talking about the humanitarian aid arriving in Gaza, but I would like to know if, in the other way, would you also be able to update us about the foreigners that are in Gaza and waiting to cross Rafah border? If you know how the negotiations are in order to allow these people to leave Egypt, to leave Gaza to exit Egypt. And also, UNRWA said that without fuel, humanitarian works need to make terrible choices. Could you also tell us which kind of choices are that? Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. With respect to the 7,000 nationals, some member states are engaged in the negotiations, so I will leave them to answer that question. But it is obviously a matter of concern. We all have staff, or there are nationals of member states who are quite obviously anxious to get out. The terrible choices include things like, where do you deliver what's inside those 10 to 20 trucks a day? Which community do you send them to? Which bakeries do you give flour and fuel to? Which desalination plants should be turned on or off? Who do you give water to? Which hospital do you send medication to? So I think we can all see what those types of choices mean for people who have to make them.
And during the regular briefing, we'll hear more about the hospitals from the local representative of WHO. I see a lot of other questions. Lynn, I know we had told you until 10:15. Is it possible that we take a few more? Have you got the time? Thank you. So my next on the list is Nick Cumming-Bruce, our correspondent of the New York Times.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, and thanks for the briefing. A quick question on the number of trucks crossing. I'm not quite clear what's keeping the number so small. Is it the physical screening capacity? Is it the requirement of the Israeli authorities to see sort of detailed lists of what's on these trucks? What exactly is slowing that process down? Secondly, is there any specific proposal to get fuel trucks in any particular number across the border at this particular point? Is that being discussed on a daily basis? And finally, could you just say when was the last time aid actually went to the north, and whether there's some clarity on the routes that could be used to get it there if that was allowed? Thanks.
Okay. Thanks. So in terms of the delays, yes, it's a combination of what you said. It's the screening. So what's happening is the trucks are coming from El Arish, which is in Egypt along the coast, close to the border with Gaza. Then they go down to a place called Nitzana. They're screened by a scanner, but they're also what we call back-to-back. So everything's unloaded, all the pallets are inspected, and then they go on to another truck, and then they drive up to Rafah, and then they go in back-to-back as well. So sometimes that process just didn't start fast enough. That particular day, there were several times when the goods arrived at night, and I'll get to that in a moment, and the implications for that. But so the screening and the requirements in terms of the packing, President Biden had to call Prime Minister Netanyahu on the second day that goods were supposed to go in. So that would have been the 22nd or the 23rd or something like that. Because in addition to the technical issues and the security issues, there's political issues as well. And there's a certain amount of pressure on the government of Israel in terms of its domestic politics. And you can ask them about that. And that delays things just also in terms of the maximum number that I think the government of Israel is prepared to allow us to bring in. So it's technical and political security. All of those issues are at play. Yes, we're negotiating intensively. And as I've said, we're in touch with various parts of the Israeli government on almost a daily basis. We need to get the trucks back up to, well, we need the electricity lines to be reconnected. And I've heard the government of Israel saying they will not be doing that. We need to get the fuel trucks in. We need to get fuel for the Gaza power plant running again. And we need to do it in a secure way that offers Israel assurances to make sure that it's not going to be diverted. So those can be very tricky. It needs to be secure and balanced with making sure we're able to get the fuel in. Aid to the north, there have been some deliveries made to Shifa Hospital, etc. We have a system in place globally called the Humanitarian Notification System. And this is something that is used worldwide in conflicts like this, where parties to the conflict are expected to acknowledge and accommodate humanitarian notifications. So when we notify a party to the conflict, we are going to be moving here in 2 hours, here's the coordinates, and this is what we're delivering. There is an expectation of parties to the conflict that they will ensure that there are no strikes in those areas at the time.
Thank you very much. Imogen Fawkes, the BBC correspondent in Geneva.
Yeah, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Go ahead.
Okay, 2 questions. First, there's been dispute about the number of deaths in Gaza. Some are questioning and suggesting that the authorities in Gaza are exaggerating them. And the second about getting aid to the north. I think we heard just a day or 2 ago that the security guarantees to move aid efficiently around Gaza and especially to the north were just not forthcoming. Does that remain the case? You were slightly vague in your answer originally.
Yeah. So, I've heard the reports about the numbers as well. Currently, the UN is relying on the numbers from the Ministry of Health inside of Gaza, just as we did rely on the numbers provided to us by the government of Israel in terms of the casualties from October 7th. We're in a situation right now where it's obviously very, very difficult for us to confirm them. We do have processes for every time there is violence, be it an escalation in Gaza or casualties in the West Bank, where we do try and confirm everything. This is obviously going to be a long-term process. Right now, people who bodies are actually stacked up outside. There is no proper organization, but the Ministry of Health did send us all the names of everybody who's been killed. So for the moment, we attribute the sources. I will leave it to you to determine whether or not you believe they are accurate, but I guess at some point, how many thousands dead is too many to start calling for an end to this. In terms of, so the government of Israel has been clear that they don't want us delivering in the north. So our staff will have to assume certain security risks if we determine the assistance that we have to be life-saving and needs to be delivered. We have we obviously have a risk and security mechanism that we go by to determine whether or not we should be delivering under certain circumstances.
Thank you very much. John Zaro Costas, France 24 English Channel and The Lancet. John, we can't hear you. Yeah, now
Can
it's
you
fine.
hear me now?
Yeah, you're on.
Yes. Good morning. I was wondering if you could please clarify a little bit on the figures you gave earlier. You said that 2/3 of the primary health clinics had to close because they were either damaged or lack of fuel. Can you tell us how many had to close down because they were damaged? And also the same with the hospitals. You said 1/3 shut down. How many was it due to damage or to lack of fuel? And are you prioritizing the fuel supplies to hospitals as the ones where they have the maximum of dialysis machines and incubators where without the power there could be certain death?
Yeah, I'm just trying to see if I've got I don't think I have the exact split in terms of damage versus fuel. I suspect some of them have an issue with both of that. Yeah, I don't have that breakdown, sorry. And then just, yes, this prioritization is exactly the issue about the difficult decisions. So we are aware of the 1,000 patients that require dialysis and over 100 children, babies that are in incubators. So we do our best to try and make the prioritization in accordance with the greatest needs.
Jamila, I see you have a follow-up, but bear with me. Let me go to the other two, give a chance to everybody to ask a question, and I'll come back to you if we have time. Musa Asi is our correspondent from Al Mayadeen. Musa, we can't hear you.
Yes,
okay.
Thank you.
Vous êtes là.
Merci. The representative of Palestinian Authority told us yesterday more than 1,000 Palestinians who were working in Israel were arrested by Israeli forces after October 7. Do you confirm that? And if you have any information about the status of these people? Thank you.
I'm not able to confirm those numbers. Sorry. And to be honest with you, I'm not able to determine whether or not charges have been laid or if they're in administrative detention. Our colleagues from OHCHR would be following that up, but I don't have the data with me right now.
Yeah, and Ravina is coming in a moment to brief you on the human rights situation in the Palestinian territory, so you can ask that question to her. Emma Farge, Reuters.
Yes, good morning. I was just wondering how much aid currently is stuck at the border waiting to go into Gaza. Can you quantify that? Thank you.
Yeah. I don't know the exact number of trucks that are there right now. The last count, which was some time ago, was 150. The issue also, though, is how much aid is actually stuck at El Rish. And I actually don't have that number, so I will look into that because that's an important question.
And I take the opportunity to tell you that Ismini Palla, that you all know because she was actually heading the communication on our Black Sea Grain Initiative, is now working with Lynn. You have her contact, so if you need to follow up on what Lynn said, or Lynn, please, Ismini has the contact with our journalist, and I welcome her. She's online. Jamil, thank you for your patience. You want to ask your follow-up?
Yes, thank you so much. It's just a clarification. First, on the numbers of foreigners in Gaza, you mentioned 7,000. Is that correct? 7,000 foreigners in Gaza negotiating a departure. And secondly, also a clarification on the fuel, on the reports of fuel with Hamas. You first said you're not aware, but then you said that if there are, then it would be used for this and not that. But can you be clear? Are you aware or you're not aware of the existence of fuel with Hamas? Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't actually say 7,000. Whoever asked the question said 7,000. I have heard 7,000. I have not seen a list. So I cannot confirm if it's 7,000 or not. So on the fuel, what I did confirm is that there's a fuel pump at Rafah on the side in Gaza. There was, to our knowledge, And our UNRWA staff have gone out to access 200,000 liters 4 days, right? 200,000 for on how do you say that? Accessing fuel for over the course of 4 days, 200,000 liters each. We have used that for UNRWA operations, hospitals, and desalination plants, and some bakeries. That's what I know. I have heard allegations that maybe Hamas has others. I am not privy to that information.
Catherine, I've just seen your chat. I put the contact details of his mini in the chat, but maybe you have a follow-up and then we'll close.
Thank you, Alessandra. Yes, because it would be nice to share the contact details of the communication person.
I put it in the chat.
Yes, thank you so much, Alessandra and Lynn. No, I'd like to come back on what Jamil just asked, because I took note about 7,000 people dead, included 3,000 children. So could you be very, very clear on what you know and what you don't know, what has been confirmed and not confirmed? That is the reason why we need your notes as soon as possible. Please, that would be very nice of you and very useful. And the second element was regarding the arrests. Do you confirm that people have been arrested? We don't, it's not a question how many or what, but is it clear that you got the information that people have been arrested since October 7? Yes or no? Thank you.
Okay, I think there's confusion about the 7,000 number, because unfortunately, I think what I said was at least 6,500 dead, and that is a number from the Gaza Ministry of Health. They have sent out a list of all the names of those people who have died. That's where I described the fact that we would be trying to confirm that number, and any increases in the number, maybe it will be less in the end. There's a lot of people who are missing. We will try and do that throughout however long this war lasts and after the war. But I'm sure you can all appreciate that the UN cannot come out with a number right now because we're not able to do the proper verification. Unfortunately, the other 7,000 number is the number of nationals who are going out, which I thought is what Jamil was talking about, but maybe I was wrong on that. 7,000 nationals is a list that has been compiled not by the United Nations. I'm not able to confirm that. The arrests, I have seen reports, but please ask my OHCHR colleagues.
Yeah, in a moment.
I am personally not in a position to tell you.
Of course.
I don't have that information in front of me.
No worries, Lynn. Lynn, I'm sorry, there is AFP who's asking for the floor. If you can take that last question, then we will close and we will go to the regular briefing. Just the very, very last.
Thanks.
Robin Miller.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Just a question on the fuel. In normal times, who is buying the fuel and who is selling the fuel? Is it the United Nations buying from Israel? Is it just a straight UN transaction across the border? Is it Hamas buying from Israel? What in normal times? How does that work? Thank you.
Yeah, so there's many different ways. UNRWA has been buying fuel through Israel for, I guess, decades. So that's one way. The fuel for the Gaza power plant also came in through Israel. And then there's lots of private businesses in Gaza, and they have their own ways to bring in fuel, and the UN, we're not monitoring all of that. They have relationships of their own with either fuel companies in Israel and also with Kogat, who administers these things on behalf of the Israelis. So the private market, UN market, the PA Gaza power plant, various, like any society, it's just more difficult to get things in, but all sorts of different vendors, I guess, and there was also fuel coming in through Egypt. So a lot of, I think, Palestinians would buy through Egypt as well.
Lynn, thank you so very much for your time, for your, being so generous with your time. We really wish you, first of all, to stay safe. That's the most important thing, and also to continue with your incredibly important work. Please come back and brief the journalists here in Geneva whenever you want. We will always be happy to hear from you. And thanks to Ismini for following up on the questions of the journalists. I'd like to ask everybody now to make a 5-minute pause, and then we will start with the regular press briefing, and we will still be talking about the situation in the Middle East with the representatives of the World Food Programme, WHO, and Ravina from OHCHR. Thank you very much again to our colleagues of OCHA and Lynn in particular. I'll see you in 5 minutes here. Same link.
Tamam. Genel plana çıksın diyor. Oradan bir
Şunu da söyleyeyim. Beyton'un bölgesiyle Endonezya Hastanesi'nden bir açıklama yapılmıştı. Endonezya Hastanesi'nden hemen o bombardımanların yaşandığı noktaların yanı başında ve Endonezya Hastanesi yetkilileri artık yakıtlarının kalmadığını ve herhangi bir 124 sivil var. İşte artık operasyonun başka bir aşamasına geçildiği aşikar şu an itibariyle de o bombardıman...
I want to find the wait.
I hear that. The first noise. Oh yeah, I will.
Jack, non, non, non. Oui, oui, attends. Laisse pas chaud. Et... Macara. Là. Si, non, je connais pas. Je te laisse. هلا الشيخ في شيخ تعالوا اضربه لا بخير الحمد لله بخير البشر بخير الحمد لله الحمد لله
Presentes dando nuestro derecho de expresión, porque nosotros nacimos en la defensa del pueblo palestino y estamos en contra del genocidio programado. Gaza, eso tiene que